just get rid of the Fed. That's the message from former Texas Congressman Dr. Ron Paul, blasting the central bank again. Take a listen to what he said just moments ago.
They do not rescue a bad economy, and when they try to, they just prolong it. And just look at, what the central bank did in Japan, and look at what they're doing here in this country. And, things aren't really that much better in spite of their so-called favorable statistics. We still have a lot of problems.
So is getting rid of the Fed just a pipe dream, or would our markets and our economy do better without it? Joining me now is Andrew Levin. He is an economist for the Federal Reserve Board. And back with us is Deirdre Bolton, David Jones, and Scott Martin. So, Andrew, as a representative of the Federal Reserve, do you think we're nuts, this idea of just getting rid of the Fed, or should we start thinking about it?
I think that there's a lot of distinguished economists, and I'll just name John Taylor as one of them, who think that the Fed needs to be systematic and clear in its policies. And I think there's been a lot of criticism, some of which is well-founded, that the Fed hasn't been sufficiently systematic or sufficiently clear.
Is today an example of that?
Today is absolutely an example. And Chair Yellen herself said, it's an unfortunate state of affairs, I think was the words that she used. I think it's urgent, it's imperative for the Fed to become more systematic and more clear, more strategic, explain more clearly to the public and to the Congress what it's doing and why.
But, Scott, Janet Yellen, above all other chairmen before her, has gone out of her way to be open about what she does. She has these press conferences. She gives out more information than other. I'm just wondering if tweaking will do it, or if you just got to get rid of the whole thing the way Ron Paul says.
Well, the tough thing about Dr. Paul's suggestion, David, is it's kind of like the 1999 movie. We're kind of in too deep, I think, at this point. I mean, we're $1 trillion plus into the Fed's balance sheet now, where you can't just, wipe that out. I mean, that just doesn't go away overnight. So the problem is, I don't think the Fed's exactly bad or whatever. It's just that, when they lose credibility, like what Janet Yellen's Fed has kind of done at this point, that's when they get in the way. That's when they're a problem. I mean, the Fed has done a lot of rescues over the years because banks have been frozen or because of financial crises. So that's okay. It's just when they get in this position that they do a bad job.
But, David Jones, the point is that you got this few group of economists, about a dozen economists deciding our future, the future of millions, billions, if you add in the rest of the world, billions of people's future is being decided by a dozen people. Is that right?
Well, let's put it this way. The president better be careful when he picks that Fed leader, and this is my whole point here. I take issue with Ron Paul on 2 points. One is the Fed did help us get out of that deep recession, that credit crisis in 2007 and 2009. Without the Fed there, with all that liquidity, to try to get investors to be more confident in the economy, to try to stop that crash that we had in all asset prices, the Fed was critical. The point is that that was in 2007 and 2009. The Fed should not be still at a 0% funds rate after 6 years of economic expansion. And so it's this Fed and the mistakes that this Fed is making that are the problem.
Deirdre, I used to work at the Wall Street Journal. The editor of the Journal was for getting rid of the Fed. He said that they do serve one purpose, as a lender of last resort. When you have a financial crisis like we had in 2008, 2009, have an institution that could be the lender of last resort, but let the markets decide what the interest rate should be, not the Federal Reserve.
Well, I think that point is very well founded, David. But we saw in 2008, we really needed the Fed. We needed all hands on deck. One thing I'm curious about, though, is when the Fed chooses to raise rates, I mean, it's going to have to pay billions of dollars on excess reserves. Guess who pays for that? Taxpayers. Exactly, which is why you have these huge calls for maybe we should just ditch it. I still am in favor of a little infrastructure just in case there's
Andrew,
another
there have been,
around
finally, we got to make it quick, but there have been other countries that have gone to a currency board or going back to a gold standard, kind of diminishing the role of the Fed. Should we take dramatic action like that, do you think?
Well, I think that there's very broad consensus among economists all over the world that what really matters to households and consumers is to keep inflation low and stable. And almost every central bank has found that having a clear inflation target and making sure that monetary policy is consistent with that target is the best thing that monetary policy can do over time.
But if inflation is higher than interest rates, savers are getting screwed. Thanks, guys. We appreciate it.